Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Major Step Podcast on WSVC Radio. I'm joined alongside me, Andrew Lucuski. We're going to be exploring all the majors and minors here at St. Vincent College. Today, we are joined by Dr. Boros, who is the Assistant Professor of Political Science here at SVC.
Dr. Boros, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you're a busy guy, so we appreciate your time.
This is fantastic. Thank you for having me.
So we'll start off first just a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You were a student here, and then you were educated at some other schools, taught at other schools, and now are back here. So what was your educational history? What led you back here?
Yeah, so you're right. I am an alum. I graduated from St. Vincent in 2016. I double majored in history and politics. Now it's called political science. But from there, I went to Baylor University in Texas. I did my master's and PhD in political science there. And then I sort of hopped around after that. I spent a year at Princeton University as a postdoc there. I spent a year teaching at Arizona State University. And then I spent another year at Benedictine College in Kansas, which is sort of a sister school of St. Vincent. The monks who run that college are related to the monks at the Archabbey here. And I took that job knowing that there was that connection and hopeful that that could lead eventually to something here at St. Vincent, and it did. So I started here in August, and it's been fantastic to be back.
That's good. Yeah, we're definitely, as a politics student, we're certainly happy to have you here because some of the department, I think, has been stretched thin, I'm sure, as they've told you.
Yeah.
And I've certainly enjoyed the class that I've had with you thus far, so we hope you're here for a long time.
Me too.
So what are some common major or minor pairings with the political science degree? I know you mentioned you were a double major in poli-sci and history.
Mm-hmm.
So history may be one of them. What are some other ones that you see kind of pretty often?
Yeah, I think history is a pretty natural one. It kind of depends on what angle and maybe specific interests students have within the realm of political science, which is very broad. Economics is a popular one. Often students will either minor in economics or double major. I think, well, Andrew, you're a business management
Yes.
double major. We get a lot of people with the McKenna connection makes it
Right, absolutely.
kind of makes a lot of sense for students. Philosophy is another big one. There's a lot of overlap between our department and the philosophy department. There's at least one course, Catholic Political Thought, that's, at least it was when I was a student, I'd have to double check this, but cross-listed in the philosophy department. So we get a lot of students who double major in political science and philosophy. There's so many different kind of angles of political science, the international side, the sort of philosophical, theoretical side. The historical, kind of especially American side, was what attracted me to both history and political science and made that a natural connection for me. So, there's a lot of different inroads. I think anything in the humanities really makes sense. A lot in the social sciences makes sense. I've never met a student, I think, who was a double major with something in the natural sciences, but I'm pretty sure there's a first-year student who's thinking about it right now. So it's possible.
Good to know. Yeah.
Someone's got to break that glass ceiling.
That's right.
So you touched on a little bit. There is a strong connection, I think, with the philosophy classes, and so many of the politics classes here, I think, lean towards like political theory stuff. So do you see a future in the department where some more, I don't want to say modern classes, because there are modern links to stuff that we talk about in class almost daily, but classes that are more focused on our modern political climate being offered. Do you see that as a thing down the road, maybe?
Yeah, I think a helpful way of thinking about it would be political science is sort of at the intersection of liberal education, which asks the big questions, right? What is justice? What is the purpose of government? How do we ensure that the best people are in charge?
Right.
These are questions that are natural to ask at a liberal arts school. And I think the way we do political science is very, very committed to that in a very healthy way. But political science also requires civic education, which is less about maybe the human being and more about the citizen.
Right.
And of what does it mean to be a good citizen? What does it mean for me to be a good American citizen, or at least resident of America, while I'm here at St. Vincent? And that requires knowing more stuff I think it requires thinking, it requires reading great books, but it also requires just kind of knowing where we're at. So I haven't taught courses on American institutions yet here, but one of the things that I've prioritized at other schools is knowing just how the structure of government is built. What is the current state of our administrative agencies and things that make up the bureaucracy? Who are the presidents? When I teach the presidency, I ask students to take a test where they list all the presidents and the years that they served. Consider yourself warned.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
But even in all of my upper level classes, especially, I like to encourage students to make connections between the ideas and sort of the modern circumstances themselves. So you're doing a research project on environmental politics in the international world now. Those sorts of things are meant to connect the ideas to the facts.
Right.
And so I'm not sure I necessarily see myself as doing some ideas classes and some facts classes, but having elements of both in everything that I teach. And I think that helps students leave courses feeling like they kind of learn something substantive about how this aspect of politics works, but also prepares them to think about them in a really robust, mature way.
Right.
Absolutely. And these mature ways of thinking, I mean, obviously you're going to be talking about some difficult concepts and theories in this major. So what are some things that you do or students can do to make these difficult, sometimes concepts a little bit more easy to understand?
A good place to start is always to say, I don't know. I always really appreciate when I ask at the beginning of class, what did you think of this reading? And a student says, well, I'm really not sure what it's saying about this. It's like, okay, good. Like, let's talk about that. This is really helpful. So, I mean, like we're all coming into classes like this not knowing things. So being honest about that and being able to, if not say exactly what the author is saying, say, my best guess is this. I love best guesses. I think they're fantastic. I give my best guesses about things all the time. So that sort of, I guess, humility, but just sort of frankness, I think can really help. The other thing I would say is being attentive to things that other people say in class. Sometimes I think it's very easy to see the professor as what the professor says is what I need to write down. But you might have a classmate who really kind of gets to the heart of something. Take that into account. We're all sort of participating in this discussion, and I try to not have my classes be only discussion. I do lecture, but kind of being prepared to learn things from your classmates. They're learning from you too. So keeping that in mind, I think is helpful. Office hours are also great. And I have been very impressed by the level to which St. Vincent students come to office hours. Everywhere I've taught before, I haven't had nearly as much interaction with students in my office as I have so far here. So I've been very pleased with that so far.
Well, that's good. We must be good students. I definitely agree on your point about learning from classmates. I think in the international politics class that I'm in that you teach, there are multiple students, Sophie and Becca as two examples, who say things that I could never have even thought of. And so learning from things that they see in the readings that we do, I think especially has helped me. And I think Zach next to me, like all of that stuff. So I think that definitely the conversations are very productive in a way that they might not be in other majors.
Yeah, I think, this is, my teaching philosophy is very much oriented toward, like, let's get, I'm always down to go down rabbit holes. You know this, but
oh yeah,
but that shouldn't distract from sort of the the idea that we really need to understand what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and if at any point a student tells me, like, Dr. Boros, I'm not really sure what's going on, like, then I'll listen. And I think my colleagues are the same way, Dr. Foss and Dr. Jivanen.
For sure, yeah.
That's understanding is a priority, not simply kind of showing off how profound we can get about our ideas or something like that. Because we're studying politics, we're studying real stuff, and if you're not grasping what that stuff is, well, then I'm not doing my job.
So, and you've said this, I think, a couple times in class. Politics is a conversation stopper. For the general public, at least.
Right.
If someone asks me what I'm majoring in and I say politics, they're like, oh. And I think you've said that if you say that, you're a political scientist, people don't really know what to say to that.
Right.
And that's a testament to some of the really tense times I think that we live in. Mm-hmm. And I think as a department as a whole, we do a pretty good job of mediating some of the tough conversations. Mm-hmm. It's no secret that there's a lot of disagreement.
Right.
Me, Zach, and Matt, for examples, do not agree on almost anything. Right. But for the most part, it's civil in class. So how do you guys, as administrators in the department, how do you guys approach that?
Well, I will just say, first of all, it took me until probably the immediate aftermath of the election to even realize what a lot of you guys' opinions were. You guys weren't, being difficult with one another in class or anything like that. And I think that speaks well of your ability to set disagreements aside. But I also think that I'm not opposed to people being very upfront with what they think. I think that's another thing that I try to prioritize. Sometimes I think professors, there's a temptation to say, like, leave all your preconceived notions about everything behind. Mm-hmm. Like, now we're just sort of thinking. I don't want you to do that, because that's not how we work.
Right.
We have preconceived notions about things. Maybe we have even some biases that, like, I don't want you to just discard them simply because you had them before class. But if you think about them, that's the goal. So I when people are upfront with saying I don't think this is good, mm-hmm. or I think that the way political leader X is behaving is bad. I welcome that. I think that that's great, but we have to be prepared to have a discussion about that.
Right.
And I think students generally are willing to do that because they recognize that class is different from just talking with your friends or commenting on a news article on Reddit or something like that.
Yeah.
So kind of maintaining kind of academic openness, I think is the goal. And I think that just comes from habit. That just comes from kind of mixing honesty with civility, and modeling that for our classmates is really, I think, the best thing we can do to encourage that.
Absolutely. Moving on now to some possibilities after St. Vincent. So what are some things that students typically do with degrees in political science? I know you're obviously teaching now. You went to a few different institutions around the country. So what do you see most common with students studying poli-sci?
Law school is a pretty common one. A lot of people, especially if they're involved in moot court or mock trial, that's kind of what they want to do. I think teaching itself, even outside of the college world, is something that a number of people have done, and I would encourage more to do. Especially, there are a lot of high schools out there, private schools, religious schools, who are looking for teachers of civics and history, and there's where a history major or minor might be a good partner with this, where you could teach American government and U.S. history or world history, that sort of thing. A number of people have gone, especially to charter schools around the country, and had good success with that. There's also always plenty of opportunities in local government. I have a classmate who works for one of the Westmoreland County Commissioners.
Okay.
I know there are people who have gotten involved in things in D.C., especially in the international world, often a master's degree at Johns Hopkins or Georgetown or American University is another one. There's one there. And getting involved in think tank work, that sort of stuff. In Harrisburg, too, there's a lot of that. So then there are also plenty of people who maybe don't end up in what we would traditionally see as politics. But if you have a family business or get on the ground floor of a company and work your way up, the ability to think, the ability to express yourself in speech and writing, those are things that you'll develop as a political science major. So I don't think that anything is really shut off to you. I think the general interests of political science majors tend in the more law and policy direction. But if that's not your speed, that's totally fine.
So we do a lot of original text reading in classes. Like for institutions, when I have Dr. Foss, we read Madison's notes. For the class I have with you, where we read the UN Charter, we read all of Kant, like all these direct readings. We don't do summaries, we don't do adaptations for any of that stuff. So how does that prepare people for things like law school if they were to go into policy making?
Yeah, the one thing that we sort of cultivate in our classes is tracing arguments. And that's what being a professional in the legal world is all about. Being able to trace arguments, being able to understand arguments, being able to maybe point out deficiencies in arguments and correct them. And then to build arguments based on the evidence, based on your interpretation of the statute or the Constitution itself. So, understanding and being able to look for a thesis statement and then say, okay, how is this author really defending this claim? I think that's a very helpful thing to be able to do. I think it also just helps us be more creative thinkers. When you're reading great texts, you're probably going to come across a lot of words that we don't use in ordinary conversation.
For sure.
And that can be kind of hard. I think my PS 100 students are often sort of kind of bedazzled by all of the words that Federalist Papers are using.
Yeah.
And I get that. That's hard for me. But I also think that by the end you're like, wow, I have a vocabulary for thinking about things better now. I can use words in a more effective way.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be using a lot of words as a lawyer or as someone writing policy briefs. Being able to use words well, both in speech and writing, I think is something that you gain from being a political science major.
Awesome. Do you have anything else, Andrew?
No, I'm all good. Thank you very much for coming on. I'm always for advocating for more people joining the politics department. I think it's an underappreciated major sometimes.
Maybe a hidden gem of some sort.
Absolutely, I would agree. Yeah. So thanks again for coming on, and thank everybody for listening to this episode of the Major Step Podcast. Now we are here with senior political science student here at St. Vincent, Matt Boyer. Matt, thanks so much for joining us today.
Glad to be on with you guys.
You're also our station manager, so we know you're super busy with all of the stuff that you have to take care of with this. So we appreciate you spending a few minutes to come talk about our politics work.
Only for you two.
Yeah, absolutely.
We understand that.
We have the best show. So
yeah, we understand.
Well, I can't pick favorites, but I'll say you guys do.
He's nodding, guys. He's nodding.
You guys do a lot, and I'm happy to give back to you guys.
Thank you. Cool. Go ahead. You want to start us off?
Yeah. So, what first inspired you to pursue a degree in this field?
So, I've always had a interest when it comes to politics. I think the majority of campus knows that by now.
Really? I would have to.
I was the same way in high school. Yeah. So, really, with my interest in government, my interest in politics, that's something that always inspired me. So, when I was looking at college, it was just kind of a no-brainer. I know that most people, they kind of think, what are we going to do? I had already decided by my junior year of high school that I was most likely going to pursue a degree in politics. Uh, I wish I could have actually gotten a second major, but really I'm still happy with where I'm at now, and then having that idea of a second major as my minor.
Yeah. We forgot to mention. So you have a digital art and media
Yeah,
minors, which you picked up not that long ago.
I picked it up my junior year.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, and I asked Dr. Boros about this. We just had him on. So there's a couple differences, with so we have a political science track, I believe, that some people are taking right now, but there's also still the politics.
Yeah.
So there's a couple differences with that, but generally speaking, the classes are the same, and a lot of it, and I think you would agree with me. It leans more towards political theory. It's not necessarily like it's not intro to American government all the time, which obviously we have that kind of class.
Right.
But it's not necessarily institutions. It's more about where the ideas of government come from.
Yeah.
So, is that different from what you thought it would be when you came in? And if so, are you upset about that necessarily?
So I wouldn't say that I'm upset with that. When I did come in, I was kind of hoping more towards a view of actually working in government, seeing the whole inner workings of how that stuff works. But I also knew there was going to be a lot of thought when it comes to looking at the beginning of our government, looking at governments of other kinds. So that was one thing. I knew there was going to be more of a political theory kind of style with this. And really, I haven't been disappointed, depending on the classes that one takes in the political science or politics degrees. It's pretty much the same thing now, whether it's a Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science.
Yeah, there's just a couple, I think.
Yeah, a few different classes.
Calculus has to be taken for the political science.
Yeah. See, I'm a Bachelor of Arts, so I don't have to take the calculus.
Yeah, I'm the same
I'm
thing,
horrible at math, and I chose that for a reason.
Yeah.
But the classes are still the same, whether you're political science or a politics, for the most part. Really, I see in some of the classes that you're able to find without directly seeing how the inner workings of the government are. You see more of the theory-based style than actually general for that. And then still getting to understand what the differences are between different governing bodies, how each of them work, what should our thoughts be, or how were they thinking about creating a society and helping that society through whatever form of governing body it is, and how that best equipped governments of the past in different countries and societies over the years.
I think that the classes here too are good. It slightly depends on the order that you take them in for this to work out, but they're very good at building on each other, and the electives that we do, I think, complement that here fairly well. The first example that comes to mind is you were in the Shakespeare political thought class that we had. Was it last spring?
Yeah.
Was it last spring?
Yep.
And I took that simply because I needed the
Right.
the elective for it. But I think that it's interesting that we could draw a couple comparisons from that to now we're taking international politics together.
Right.
So I think that the department has done a pretty good job with offering courses that might not seem on their face related in any way.
Oh, no, exactly. And I even think some of the other classes that I've taken, in my early years, I was doing this more for the core. I was taking a lot of theology-based classes, and then also having Dr. Lucas Brayola for my listening seminar. I was having 3 classes that overlapped each other in certain readings. The one that I always think to is Plato with his Republic. Now, we weren't reading the whole thing, but at least understand the allegory of the cave and realizing how that matches with government. That was something very, very big that I noticed my freshman year. So theology, politics, philosophy as well. Yep. So having those all kind of come together, definitely something. And then, of course, when you even look at the classes when registering, they are kind of jumping right off each other. Now, Andrew, since I know you have this as well, starting off with classical political thought, then modern political thought, then American political thought, and then finally Catholic political thought.
And then you get into some stuff like institutions. And
all
that stuff too. That's one of the few classes that I think really does offer if you approach it the right way, modern
Right.
takes, because it's more modern just because of the text that you read,
Yeah.
as compared to some things with European governments. But then you can also you read things like Madison's notes, and you're like, okay, now I understand where this aspect of our government directly comes from,
Right.
and you can link
Yeah.
that to some discussions that happened today.
Yeah, and I will just point for any of our listeners, we're not just talking about governments in general in a lot of these classes. We really get down to it, where some of these are directed more towards one body over another. So, for instance, I took Constitutional Law and National Powers with Dr. Jerome Foss, and that was solely looking towards the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, another class that I took with him, the name has since changed, we were looking more so at the different bodies that are underneath the presidency, all the different executive branches, not just the cabinet members, but some of the other ones that are kind of forgotten about. Taking a class with Father Bonaventure Curtis. It was environmental politics or something like that.
Yeah.
So talking very much about the EPA. Another one with Dr. Jividan, looking more so at the legislative branch. A few that I've taken as well, really talking about the beginnings of American government, really going through like the notes of the Constitutional Convention.
Yeah, they do a good job finding the texts that we really need, I think, to understand. And we talked with Dr. Boros about this for a minute. We don't do like summaries. We don't do like recaps of any of these texts.
Very primary based.
Yeah, it is. It's 100% primary based. I don't remember the last time in a class that we read something that was not the actual text itself, unless it was translated from another language. But it's still it's
Exactly.
It's still
And that's one thing I really have to prize St. Vincent's Political Science Department on is, and actually not just the politics department, but St. Vincent College in general. Most of the departments here, depending on what it is, do not use textbooks. They do not use somebody else's words to talk about whatever something is. They go right to those primary sources. And that's something that is great for anyone because you are hearing right from the lion's mouth. So when it comes to Madison's notes, you are listening to exactly what Madison was saying. When you're looking at the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist papers, you're seeing what certain members of the Founding Fathers are saying, rather than hearing Joe Schmo say, oh, well, the Founding Fathers thought this, and this is how you should think that they thought, because this is what I say.
based
No.
on what
Yeah.
It also makes it cheaper for us students too, which I don't think any of us
A little bit.
No.
I mean, some of those books can get up there, depending on what you're all going for.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Especially when the professor is assigning many books at once.
Yeah, that is one of the downsides. We do usually get about 4 or 5 per class that we'll have to do.
I am not afraid to say that, and I won't say which professor or which class, but there was a time when I had to buy all my books from the bookstore where it was into the high, getting close to $1,000, we'll say, just because one class assigned me about 8 or 9 different books.
Yeah, you
They got it.
That's true. You can say at least you come out more well-read and well-versed. Because
Well, in the words of a former professor here in the politics department, Dr. Brad Watson, who left after my freshman year, he said that it's always good to be buying the books. Yes, they're expensive, but you want to keep them, and in 30 years you have these very intelligent books to have on your bookshelf. So when people come over, they actually think you're a smart person.
yeah, that
No,
can
it's helpful.
exactly.
Yeah,
that can
yeah.
a degree.
Now, granted, I was able to find some books cheaper than at the bookstore, not trying to discourage people from it.
It's
But
reality.
yeah, it's reality.
The future-
Finding an online version or a cheaper version on eBay or something. So I'm just making that point because I did not spend $700 at the bookstore.
Sure, yep.
I'm gonna call you out at these Matt Boyer dinner parties in a couple of years.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah,
So you mentioned class, like a class, not by name, but you mentioned a class that you weren't very fond of, I'd say lately. But do you have a favorite topic or class that you've taken so far?
Ooh.
Maybe a few.
Yeah, I can't give you directly one. Each one of them has been interesting in their own way. I will say one that at first I came into and I wasn't really expecting to have much, but ended up really enjoying it was Father Bonaventure's economic policy or whatever it was, that kind of class. For me, it's always come down to the professors, and out of my time here at St. Vincent, there's not been one professor that I have had that has something to do with a politics class that I have not enjoyed. Dr. Foss, I've known since I first came to St. Vincent. He was the professor I met with, so I've always enjoyed taking classes with him. Dr. Jividen, as much as he heckles me and everything, I always like to be with him. And having Dr. Boros for one of his first classes as a new professor, he has so far been very fun and somebody who I've enjoyed being able to talk with outside the classroom as well.
Sure, I think he does a good job, and this is not a critique of the professors that have been here before, if they're listening to this, which I no doubt that they are. I think Dr. Boros does a great job not being uncomfortable about touching on some modern stuff.
Yeah.
Like, he has no problem bringing up conflicts in Ukraine, in the Middle East right now, because international
Or conflicts in just American politics. Yeah.
Like he said during his interview, like, he's not uncomfortable having people be blunt about what they think about something like that. That should be.
And that's one thing that I've really credited all the professors here about, is they want the students to express their views and their thoughts. Yes, that can get messy in politics. I mean, it's the messiest thing to talk about, really, whether you're at the dinner table at home or you're in a classroom.
It's a conversation stopper.
Yeah, it really is. So when you think about them doing this, it's because at a Catholic, Benedictine, liberal arts school, you want them to have their own mind, not being told by somebody else, this is how you need to think. They want you to come to their own conclusions and be able to really find your own way through there. So that's one thing I've always enjoyed, because I will give a great instance, and this kind of goes back to the original question, Colt. My freshman year, it was the PS 100. It was called American Regime. I don't know if it still is or not.
I believe that's still what it is.
I was talking with somebody, and he was saying that it switched back to like Intro to American Politics, so I didn't know. But I know that was the old name. Within like 2 months into the class, it was with Dr. Foss, we broke him. And what I mean by that is there was about me and 4 or 5 other people. We're all talking about some topic, I forget exactly what it was, and instead of just continuing to raise our hands, we next, are all looking at each other, kind of having our own debate in the middle of the classroom. Foss is standing at the podium, and he's just like, gets up, just pretty much gives up, and sits down in a chair in the corner of the classroom, putting his head into his hands, and he's like, I give up, this is over. Yep. Just from the debate that was happening. It was a great debate, and he really enjoyed it, but he said, you guys broke me with this. So, I mean, that's probably one of my more favorite moments. Domestic public policy, which has changed, which I took with Dr. Foss, another fun class, being able to really dive into the makings of public policy. That was the one that really focused more so on some like the other cabinet positions, but also working within the presidency for it. Getting to see how policy is actually done by looking at previous policies that were made. One big thing that we looked at was President Jackson and the issues he had with the establishment of the national banks. So that was something really interesting, because you see that it's not all easy peasy, and that these senators and congressmen are just sitting on their butts scrolling through Facebook half the time while in D.C. I mean, some of them probably are. But frankly, there is a quote that I always think about that's really true, and I understand this more from not just domestic public policy, but all these classes with Dr. Foss, Dr. Jividen, and now Dr. Boros. There's 2 things in the world that you don't ever want to see how they're made: bills and sausages. So policy, it can get messy, but it's interesting when you look at what it all takes.
For sure, and I think it's another testament to the department. They do a really good job at teaching the incoming students how to take some of these very abstract thoughts, process it, and then reflect on it. Like, a lot of our assignments in class are papers. We don't do a ton. We do exams occasionally. We don't really do class presentations.
Yeah,
it tends to be reflection papers on a couple of the main themes that we've discussed in the class. So I think they do a really good job with reading us, like helping us read through the text, form our own analysis on it, and then kind of regurgitate that.
Yeah, and our own views and opinions. And yeah, that goes back to what I stated earlier about liking that they're doing this. Yeah, we will have a few exams or tests or something like that from time to time, and they're not always the best, and sometimes writing the papers can get a little bit tedious, I'll say.
Yeah,
I mean, Yeah, depending on what the topic is and if you actually have interest in it when it comes to that form of politics. Though, yeah, I've always enjoyed rather doing the papers one because I'm not trying to remember a bunch of stuff. I just can give my own opinion while stating facts, going back to those texts.
Yeah, it's more productive than the weekly homework assignments or quizzes.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So, Colt, do you have another question that you'd like to ask Matt? We've been rambling on.
I mean,
I don't want to take over.
You've mentioned a few professors by name already, but I was wondering if you had a professor in the politics department or not, or just a faculty member, because I know you're in with most of them.
Yeah, Boyer knows everybody.
That has kind of guided you along your journey in this field, or helped you at least.
Yeah. To say it blankly, Dr. Jerome Foss.
His emails, JF.
Yeah. His emails. Well, I think he takes that from Dr. Watson because he always used to sign at BW.
Then now Jivenen's JRJ.
Yeah. I mean, kudos to Jivenen for at least having that third letter in there. That's just a standout. That's the nod because he's the chair of the department. So having him just kind of show he's better than the other ones.
It's got a one. I mean,
I don't. No, maybe you can answer this for me, Andrew. Does Dr. Boros sign at JB?
No, not yet. He has the official email signature.
Give him a few.
Yeah, give him a year to get settled in, and he'll be like that.
Yep.
And then I know Dr. McConaughey doesn't do it either. No, Dr. Foss, I have really enjoyed being with. This is actually the first semester that I have not had a class with him.
Yeah, he's moved around he's dealing with a lot of the core stuff.
Yeah.
At the moment, I think so. He's not offering as many politics classes.
He's not really. Yeah, I think he's doing PS 100 and then like core writing or something this semester.
Yeah,
but it was kind of sad for me because for me, I came to St. Vincent, like I actually got to see campus and everything 2 weeks before classes started. I committed to St. Vincent without ever stepping on campus, without ever meeting anybody, but the statistics and track record that I saw was just too good for me not to commit to. So getting to meet Dr. Foss during that first meeting, and one thing that was real nice for him, he had a book on his bookshelf that I saw, and it was one that I was always interested in reading, and he and I started talking a little bit about it. It's called A Pope and a President. It talks about President Reagan and Pope John Paul II bring down communism. It's signed by the author, too, and he gave it to me. And he's like, here, this is yours now. I have an extra copy, and it's like, wow. So just seeing that was a nice thing, and then continuing to be in classes. He's someone who really... Because he's also worked in that field as well, working directly with politics.
Yeah,
so,
he did a lot of constituent relations stuff.
Yeah. In fact, his former boss just lost in the election for Senate Majority Leader. The senator from Texas that was going up against the majority leader.
John Cornyn.
Yeah. So that's kind of nice having somebody. The other person who I've always looked up to just because of his experience and knowledge when it comes to politics is Father Bonaventure Curtis. He and I are completely different when it comes to our views, but that does not stop us. Well, yeah. But that's not something that should stop us. I know with the election just happening not too long ago, you're seeing a lot of heat between both sides of the aisle. And a big thing that I saw, especially on social media, was everybody posting, don't let politics divide you. And that's something that I love when it comes to sitting in Father Bonaventure's class and just being able to talk with him. Sure, we debate and we view differently. Yeah,
he'll give you a bit of a sarcastic
he
comment,
will.
too,
He will. However, the nice thing with him is I love looking to his experience. When he was 15 or 16, he worked for, at that time, Senator Hubert Humphrey, who later became vice president and tried running for the presidency after Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. And Father Bonaventure was there as Hubert Humphrey's right-hand man pretty much throughout all of that. So he has that experience and something that I applaud him for because he knows that I might go into government, so I know I can always ask his advice on doing stuff.
It's going to be a scary day if Matt Boyer's running our government. No, we're just kidding. So you...
Just to tell all the listeners, I am right now giving Andrew an evil eye for this one.
You mentioned Dr. McConaughey, and that reminded me of something we didn't talk with Dr. Boros about. But we have the Center for Political and Economic Thought here at St. Vincent, which we didn't bring up yet. And they do a really good job every semester of bringing in some speakers, and they host a dinner beforehand. So sometimes the
which you have yet to come to.
I go to the talks. I go to the talks.
Yeah, but you got to come to the dinners.
All right,
We've
fine.
been to the talks together.
We have, yeah. Got me off track. So I think, and I'm admittedly so. I've thought this. A lot of the talks that seem abstract and a little bit of a head nod. I think sometimes you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
What does this have to do with stuff that we're learning here in the politics department? But the speakers that they bring in do a fantastic job. Whether they've written a book, they're an educator at another school, or they give lectures.
Right.
They will bring in some modern examples to help people understand. I think one, and I know you enjoyed it too because you asked a few questions, was the statistics talk that we had earlier this semester. It might have been September, maybe early October. I don't remember. I thought he was really good. I forget the professor's name, but stuff like that I think really helps students learn outside of the classroom.
Right. And yeah, first off, I will, because you did bring up Dr. McConaughey, I will applaud her for all of her work. She is nonstop busy with trying to do everything that needs to be done for the Center for Political Economic Thought to continue on, whether that is, setting up a next speaker and making all the plans for the dinner and everything. Or I don't know if Dr. Foss and Dr. Chividan, along with some of the economic and finance professors who are fellows there, all go off and do talks on behalf of the center, how that works. But she does a whole lot on top of still teaching a couple classes, so bravo to her. The CPET lectures I've always enjoyed. I was able to get in there early in my freshman year because I had a class that first semester with Dr. Watson, who used to be the head of CPET. And I always recommend to anyone, definitely go to the dinners if there is a seat open. And again, I'm going to still call you out on this just because...
I'll get to one before you graduate.
Yeah, there you go. Or even after I graduate, you know what? I'll still be around for a little bit.
I know you'll be around. Yeah, we do have one next
coming
week,
up next Wednesday, yeah.
On looking behind the veil of college admissions. So
yeah.
At face, you're like, interesting. But I think he's going to go into some things about, college choice, if there's federal funding involved.
Right. And I think these are all great topics, and they've changed because it's not all just one view. Some of these presenters, they either make it very moderate and have both sides seen, or they don't get very political into it. They're just showing you the direct facts for you to come up with your own mind and answer in that. And that's one thing I've always enjoyed. The dinners are also a nice time to, if you get lucky enough to sit at the table with the speaker, which I have done on numerous occasions, being able to pick his brain before the lecture on his thoughts about different things and getting a little bit of an idea what he's talking about already, and more than what you would get from the actual lecture. As well as, you also get to rub elbows a little bit, if that's a good term, with these professors and along with other people.
Yeah, you never know who you meet, who knows.
Exactly. And it allows you to have great connections with people, getting to know these professors outside the classroom, getting to know the speakers and other people that are there. It's always a very fun time. The lectures, I don't go up and ask as many questions as I used to, usually because I ask all my questions beforehand at the dinner. Though, they are always good. I know one that I will always remember, we had a Democratic congressman who came to talk about the views on abortion, which is a very heated and touchy subject.
I don't think I went to that one, but I remember I feel like I remember the flyer going.
Yeah, and that was a very interesting one to hear him talk at. Now, he was pro, but he was talking, being a member of the Democratic Party while being pro-life. So he was talking about both sides. He didn't get entirely political, saying one side or the other and the beliefs behind it. He gave both sides, and it was very good. What was nice is less than a week later was the March for Life in D.C., and he did give a shout-out to St. Vincent. He was one of the speakers there, so that was kind of cool, being on the National Mall and hearing him call us out. So that was one. This wasn't a CPET dinner, but this was through, I believe, CPET, or at least the Political Science Department, just happening a few months ago, where we had a panel including the former governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Corbett, having a member of the district attorney's office, having a federal judge, all these different gentlemen there to talk and give statistics and everything about politics in the area and just what their views are when it comes to this nation. So, yeah, like I said, very moderate because they want you to come up with your own answers for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I highly encourage everybody who can, whether you are politics or not, just come to these and don't just go to get the extra credit from your professors. It is a nice perk, but go there and actually listen. Don't be just sitting there in the back so you can sign Dr. Jividen or Dr. Boros' paper afterwards saying that you were there. Meanwhile, while the lecture's going on, playing on your phone or something. No, actually listen to and think about this because they are interesting topics, whether it directly connects to politics or if it's something you got to think more about on how this is such a big issue or how this connects with a governing body of some kind.
I would absolutely agree with you on that.
I don't have any more questions if you do, Andrew.
No, I'm all good. I think Boyer gave us some good insight combined with Dr. Boros.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any final remarks before we sign off?
Well, I congratulate you guys. This is what, episode 5?
4 or 5?
4, because we're rotating the schools.
That's right.
Yeah.
So this will be episode 4. So congratulations to you guys for this one, and as well as Inside the Den. I appreciate you guys doing this, and I appreciate everyone who would listen to this. Definitely at least take one class with Dr. Foss, Dr. Jividen, Dr. Boros. The liberal arts is to give up your own answers and ideas for this kind of stuff. That's something that they really promote. So whether you're interested in politics, Republican, Democrat, still, this is something that would very much help you out. And for somebody like me who's not going into law, not going to get a PhD, those are like your two big things.
Right.
For me, who might go into government or might go into something completely different, maybe I go into media, I want people to understand you don't have to become a politician. You don't have to become a lawyer.
Yeah, this isn't a degree.
Very few people.
Office.
Yeah. People think that there's very few things you can do with a politics degree. And coming in, I thought I was going to go for law, and I changed my mind halfway through. I didn't want to do that. So I'm kind of thinking to myself, what could I do? After talking with Dr. Foss and Dr. Jividen, they told me about all these other ideas, some that are more attractive to me, like possibly becoming a political analyst, working for a news agency or something. So don't think that going into politics department, you have to become a politician. You have to become a professor or something like that. There's a whole lot more you can do.
Yeah, I would once again absolutely agree with you. Well, we thank you very much for your time, station manager Matthew Boyer. I think was this your first interview on a show?
Besides my own show. Yeah, besides my own show. Yeah, which, you know what, I will say this before you guys turn off and cut off my mic here. Yeah, no, I'm going to advertise my own show just because I can. We will have actual ads for the shows coming through, but definitely, so I'm not just talking politics, those who are interested in exploring all the haunts, legends, and unknown mysteries of Western PA to tune in to Unearthing the Unknown every Wednesday. But this is my first.
Flooding our airwaves.
Oh, you know it. You know I'm happy to do that one. But no, this is my first interview for something like this.
It's, we're the best show. True. Just saying.
I never gave my endorsement. Not entirely here.
Unofficial.
And not entirely. All right.
Well, I had to give my approval for you guys to even have this show.
True.
Yeah, we'll take that.
Thank you very much again, Matt, and thank everybody for listening to this episode of the Major Step Podcast. We'll be back next week with our latest department.
Hey there, listeners. I'm Matt Boyer, station manager of WSVC Radio. If you like what you're listening to, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and hit that bell button to be notified with all of our newest updates. Every day, one of our shows is releasing a new episode. Stick around and stay tuned.